ones I showed you in Ohio earlier, and some of the mounds scattered about, and get a sense that the man site really was situated between the Ohio Hopewell and Havana Hopewell, which were like the two big centers for Hopewell culture. And at the man site, if you go, this is a wide Middle Woodland practice, making prepared cords and then napping these blades off of them. So it's not just restricted to the man site, but you see at the man site there's just a ton. Really, these blades are ubiquitous, and they're usually made out of Wyandotte chert, this gray chert. So you find those all over at the man site and Middle Woodland low flared base points. But if you go to Mississippian sites, you also find in Mississippian features, so these come out of excavated Mississippian houses, refuse pits, Mississippian contexts, you find the exact same Middle Woodland blades and low flared base points at every excavated Mississippian site in southwestern Indiana, which is pretty cool. So some previous researchers said, well, of course, they're going to man, they're picking up these tools to just recycle them out of convenience. But I argue that it's more than convenience, because you find these in almost every structure that has been excavated at outlying sites. There's at least one point or blade or core. And Mississippians, of course, were totally capable of making their own blades if they wanted to. They had that technology, they had that lithic technology. But they are traveling at Angel and Ellerbush, they're traveling or having people bring stuff all the way from Maine. So we're talking like 75 kilometers downriver. This is not just like walking next door and picking up some blades off the surface. Of course, Southwind and Stephen Steinkamp are closer. Sorry. But you actually see at Southwind, which is the closest site, I mean, it's just within a couple miles of the man site, you see the lowest density of blades. And then at sites farther afield, like Angel, Stephen Steinkamp, and Ellerbush, you see more. So I argue that this was an important part of community making, and being part of this Angel regional community had to do with using these Middle Woodland objects, which probably would have been very powerful. You're going to a landscape that has geometric earthworks, it would have been known about, and perhaps even the alignments of these structures. So recently, based on some georeference maps by Mike Stradrewski at the University of Southern Indiana, I was able to measure the azimuths of some of the manned geometric earthworks. And IU2, which is partially this square earthwork, the two sites highlighted in yellow align to the lunar movement the Angel aligns to. And IU3 is really close. So it seems like not only was Angel built to align to the moon to connect to Cahokia, but then also maybe the Angel was built in place where it was in southwestern Indiana because of its proximity to the man site. So sort of engaging with that Middle Woodland ancestral history of the landscape seems to be really important for not only building the monumental landscape at Angel and mounds that would have structured ceremonies, but then in the everyday life that you're building your houses and you're going to man, you're picking up blades off of the surface, and then you're using those. They've been reworked, they're used, and then you're discarding them in your houses and with your regular soil. And I should say, two things that were important to say that I glossed right over. One, in terms of the Angel axis, there are no natural features or physiographic features that share that alignment. So it's not a coincidence. And then in terms of the Middle Woodland tools, there are no Middle Woodland ceramics found in Mississippian contexts. And there would have been Middle Woodland, very distinctive, stamped Middle Woodland pottery all over the surface at Man, as you know, just in the same context as the blades and points, but they're only collecting the blades and points and cores. And another little tidbit, there is a mound. Here's Angel, Palisade would have been here. Here's the slough. This mound here is a large conical mound. It looks like it's square, but we think that's just due to modern agricultural practices sort of going around it and eroding the surfaces at the time. But because it's a conical mound and it's separated, There hasn't been any Mississippian material found in that mound. Investigations have been limited, mind you, but it's suspected that this might be a Middle Woodland mound. So it seems like the importance of having angel in this particular landscape, aligned these ways, using these particular materials, of course connects it to Cahokia and this larger Mississippian sphere, but very specifically is citing and referencing this powerful ancestral Middle Woodland landscape. Hopefully very soon, as part of the new museum, we're going to be doing some limited coring of Mountain G there, and next time I check in, I'll be able to give you some answers if we decided it was Middle Woodland or Mississippian. And here's a picture of Mount G to give you an idea. Again, we think that squared off shape is due to agriculture. This slide just reiterates the alignments that you see across the region at every site, and then the practice again of collecting those same Middle Woodland plates and then reusing them in Mississippian contexts. And that being sort of the key, not decorated pottery, not any of these obvious other material indicators that archaeologists might normally look at, but the alignment of household architecture and everyday use of curated ancestral tools seems to be what sort of connects this community and this region together. I'm happy to field questions because I'm sure there are a lot, since I was talking wildly about lunar alignments and Middle Woodland ancestors and lots of things. Special thanks also to my parents. Bill and Janice Watts are here today to see. They helped me backfill the Stephenstein campsite after my first excavations, and also to Erin Benson, pictured here. I'll go ahead and embarrass her. She's in the top row back there. And Jeff Cruckton, who also helped on my excavations.
What is planned with the state of Illinois, with the museum? How do you say Indiana? What are your plans of the museum you said mentioned?
Yes, so essentially the facility that we have right now, we share a building with the Mathers Museum of World Cultures, and none of it, we don't have humidity control anywhere in the building. We're a repository for 5 million artifacts total. The Mathers has a collection of like 40,000 cultural items. So essentially our facility is getting totally revamped. We're getting new HVAC so we can properly store artifacts, and then we're going to all become part of this new museum. One of the central exhibitions that we're currently in the planning stages, of course, because we have to move out 5 million artifacts out of our building this summer and go somewhere yet to be determined, and then move them all back into this new museum. But we're planning exhibits in the meantime. So one of the central exhibits is going to be about Angel, and it's going to be a virtual reality experience. So you can go stand in the East Village and move around the East Village. So we're really excited about that.
Now, is that museum been planned for the Angel site? Is that what you're saying?
No, this is separate. There is a really nice interpretive center at Angel Mounds itself. So this is at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. Part of the university. I'm just going to go counterclockwise from who I saw.
Do you mind going back about 3 or 4 slides? That's
Sure.
one of the maps.
Farther?
Yeah, this way.
Yeah.
So you see these holes that are, well, perfectly aligned, like after the west, east side.
Yes.
That line. Do you know, what is that?
I should have explained LiDAR a little more. So you have in post-processing, after you collect the data, you have the ability to sort of like process out and filter out certain things. So this is actually a neighborhood. These are the streets, and then those are the rooms of houses. That does look, I never thought of that.
What is that, like channel right there toward the bottom?
Oh,
right
this
there.
is
Like,
just sort of where the Ohio River has eroded away.
but then it goes back up to a bank, so that's almost like a little channel, like a little shipping port that you could dock.
Oh, maybe there is a dock there. Sorry, I've never worked on this portion of the site, so you might be right. There is
a
a.
higher ground, then where it's almost like water, and then
Yeah.
you can fill that theoretically, like these people go to bed, trade traffic come right in there and dock and not have to deal with the current.
Any other questions about the LiDAR since we have that?
That wasn't my question. So all of the sites, the Man, Angel, Southwind, and Stevens Camp,
Yes.
are they all located inside the, like the Ice Age river bluff, like the mountains here are, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there actually there isn't a bluff on the northern side, well, either the northern or southern side of the Ohio in that stretch. So all those sites are in the floodplain, and there's just floodplain terracing. You don't have the nice bluffs like we have sort of in this section of the Ohio, or Mississippi, sorry. Switching back and forth. Okay, I'm going to keep going counterclockwise. Yep.
The moon cycle, 19-year approximately.
Yes.
What structure is that on? And that they lined up with what every 19 years?
So mound A, here I'll just actually go back, sorry, I apologize in advance for going this far backward. I know you all wanted to see this presentation all over again. Okay, so this is the alignment of Mound A, and so the moon set actually happens at sort of the tangential axis of the 22.9 degrees. So we were saying 22 and 24 degrees earlier, so it would have happened right there. And that's where the moon will set on the horizon as viewed from there's a conical offset. So Mound A is a platform mound, and then they put a little conical mound right in the southeastern corner. So that seems to be the juncture.
18.6 years ago before the moon.
Yes, for that particular alignment.
Well, that's where the moon is going to hit the spot at 19 years.
I mean, it would set on all sorts of, every night on the horizon in a different place, but that particular alignment, that precise alignment, only every 18.6 years. And I'll be honest, I can't delve too far into that. My archaeoastronomy is limited because I certainly did not expect these alignments when I started my investigations, but here they were. Okay, I'm going to keep going this way.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was a population increase at Angel around 1200 AD, which corresponds, I think, with the declining of the population of Cahokia.
It sure does.
Do you think that some of these people are moving down here?
I do. In fact, I just argued that in a recent article. I'm not going to go to the end, but I have another slide if you're interested in any more information about the new museum and a couple articles that I have published about Angel or Cahokia. I've got QR codes that you can scan with your phone. But it is really good timing that people seem to be leaving Cahokia and you see an uptick in population. You also see a really extended far back in time, a connection between Angel and Cahokia. So the late woodland predecessors to Mississippian in the Angel region, the Yankeetown culture, you find, so I've worked at Yankeetown sites, and Yankeetown culture had very beautiful, particularly decorated pottery. I have found, and other researchers have found, more Yankeetown decorated pottery here in the American Bottom region than I have found in Indiana at Yankeetown sites where I'm supposed to find a bunch of it. So there's been a really long-standing connection from basically Cahokia's fluorescence. You see really early Cahokian context, you see Yankeetown pottery here. So I argue in this recent paper that probably people are moving back to their sort of like ancestral Indiana homelands and helping to build Angel and also making some radian-sized pottery at Angel. I'm going to go Indiana sweatshirt. Yay, go Hoosiers.
Where is that museum on campus? What building would I recognize it?
So you would see the Mathers Museum because they have a big sign that says Mathers Museum. It's on 7th Street. So it's just like a block away from Dunn Meadow. You will not see a Glenn A. Black Laboratory of Archaeology big sign because the architect's office will not let us put a big sign only on the side of the building that nobody drives by, so nobody knows we exist. But soon enough, it will just say IU Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. So hopefully you can't miss it then, but I don't have much faith in the architect's office at IU, to be honest. keep moving this way.
I find it interesting, I'm glad you kept this one up, that it's actually the tangential line.
Yes, and
that
sorry I didn't
has-
make that
has the
clear.
lunar- And the mound is obviously, you know, mound itself is obviously this 22.9. Is that 22.9 mean anything besides creating a tangent? And is there anything you found with 22.9?
No, and that's really, we sort of emphasize that side because it's the long axis of Angel, or excuse me, the long axis of Mound A. And they even built this sort of like apron lower platform to extend Mound A. So that's why we sort of harp on that, but really it is the tangent that sets all of this up. Bill Romaine might have more to say on that because he sees some alignments between, this is Mound C here, and so it goes right over Mound C, and there's some other sort of tangential alignments, but I don't feel comfortable necessarily saying those because he's the one that came up with them, and I don't know his exact thinking behind some of those, but surely there are more.
At Cahokian itself, you have the 5-degree offset, but then you have to do some squares and diagonals and all of that to come up with a lunar alignment. So it's not.
This one's
clear.
easier, thank
this
goodness.
This one's very clear.
This one's a lot easier, thank goodness for me.
Can you talk a little bit about the palisades and the different sites, you know, their size and purpose and their lunar alignment?
Sure. So something I didn't mention, again, sorry, I have to flip through all of this, but I want to get to the slide of Southwind and Stephen Stein Camp. So I will be honest, in my excavations, and Jeff can bear witness to this, I was not able, I opened up a large area over this anomaly and in this area, and I was not able to find a traditional palisade, the signature that I thought I would. I may have found more of a ditch. It's still unclear, and I really need to get back out there to make sure I understand what those anomalies are. I mean, they show up in the magnetometry perfectly, but on the ground it was really difficult to find. However, it's aligned about 6 degrees east of north. Southwind is also aligned 6 degrees east of north, which is within 1 degree of what was mentioned, the Cahokia alignment of 5 degrees east of north. So it's possible that even just the alignment of these fortification walls might be a reference to Cahokia, which is pretty cool. It's unclear, these are bastions, which would have been used, platforms in the bastions so you could see outside of the palisade, generally thought to be sort of military style for defense. It's unclear in the magnetometry if there are any bastions at Stephen Stein Camp, but I think it's pretty cool that they're both angled the same way because again, the river is not that direction, there are no sloughs or other sort of landscape features that would have dictated that these two villages be aligned this particular way. And at Angel, the palisade starts, the outer palisade about 1250 and continues to shrink in. And we do have some evidence for violence at Angel, so it might have been a tumultuous time sort of after 1250, which is sort of widely thought that that is a tumultuous time in the middle Mississippi, Ohio River Valley for Mississippians at that time. We're going to swing back this way. Oh, Larry, sure.
The Munsons have been working, I think it's Hovey Lake, is
Yes.
that right? And do they have any alignments here? I know you haven't done the magnetometer.
So, let me take a drink of water. This is the story.
I think it's right in between the two, right?
Yes, so Hovey Lake would be, Hovey Lake is a late pre-contact, it's a big village in southwestern Indiana, so Hovey Lake is actually over here.
Oh, there, oh, okay.
So, pretty close. Cheryl Munson, who's an amazing archaeologist, did a bunch of work at Hovey Lake in the 1990s, and it seems like Hovey Lake is sort of a large organized village. She thinks it is a Caborn-Wellborn village, so Caborn-Wellborn is similar to Oneota here, so like post 1400 or late 1300s, you have people coming in probably from the north who are not Mississippians interacting with Mississippians. I think Hovey Lake is probably an Angel Phase village because what I've been able to tell is that it looks like it aligns the same way as Southwind and Stevenstein Camp. So it shares the angel alignment. So that's going to be a future avenue of research, but I have to sort of very delicately break that to Cheryl because she's an esteemed colleague and I'm going to completely argue against her. Yeah. Go back to the top.
This might be out of your field. However, I'm curious. I was just thinking, if you guys have ever come across anybody that studied the lunar alignments of, for example, birds' nests in the area and how they build their homes. I'm curious. Have you ever come across anyone who has thought of doing that?
Is there like a connection between birds nesting and the moon?
Well, it could be. You never know. I'm just thinking here right now, the birds in the area could be up to something. Yeah.
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the short answer is no, nobody has thought about that yet.
Because I mean, animals are quite intuitive. These birds are flying, and they have quite a good view of the whole thing. So, you know, I don't know. It's just a thought.
Well, it's the first time I've heard that, so yeah, I'll keep it in mind.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to the top.
I was going to ask about lunar alignments and women, or gender, mythological female.
Yes, very much. So the moon in general sort of ties to like symbols of fertility, women's cycles, things like that, and female power. So this very much could be, the lunar alignments here at Angel could be sort of tying into that, the feminine life forces that aligning things to the moon or thinking about the lunar cycle or representing the lunar cycle in different ways could tie into. You literally wrote the book on that, so.
It's just trying to not overlook a possible connection.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I haven't really explored that aspect of it yet. Gender in general hasn't been an area that has received much attention at Angel, so that's definitely a future avenue for research.
So this is getting really weird, but how about the blades? Is there any connection between these Hopewell blades and the later blades and women's work?
I don't know. So there was a question about if the blades may tie into women's work. Do you have any knowledge on Middle Woodland?
I don't even want to touch that.
Larry knows better, no. Not to my knowledge, there's been some limited use where I like that you're connecting to all of the future research that I would like to do. So there's been some limited use where in the 70s that a graduate student said that he thought maybe the blades were used on sort of like grassy materials based on his limited study, like cutting grasses, something like that. But I'm not sure, which very much could tie to women's work and more domestic work in some ways. But there's a new graduate student in the IU Department of Anthropology who is going to be doing, for her dissertation, she's going to be looking at the Middle Woodland man blades from the man site, not the Mississippian context, and doing some use where. So she can look under a microscope and look at these tools and compare those to experiments that she's done to see what those tools were used on. Were they used to cut bone, grass? Were they used on wood? What were they used for? And so I'm hoping to work with her on a project moving forward and get the Middle Woodland blades, or get the Mississippian Middle Woodland blades to her. Okay. I don't know who, I think you were next.
You said the man side was BC and the rest are 80s. Were these sites in Indiana going on at the same time as Archaeology? And do they have an equinox circle on any of those, including the man, for the equinox?
There are no alignments to the equinox as far as anybody has been able to tell thus far. But yes, Angel would have been happening the same time as Cahokia and then a little later. So when Cahokia, the population starts to decline, Angel's still going for about another 100 years. People seem to be living at Angel and in the region at the other sites. But yeah, the alignments have been difficult. That's why there hasn't been that much work done, because it was very generally to like the summer solstice sunset was the closest sun alignment, basically. that anybody could come up with. So it wasn't until recently with the LiDAR and Bill Romain's work that he was able to pinpoint that it was actually referencing the moon.
Has anybody ever taken, so most mounds 5 degrees off, and they just, you know, straight at 90-degree angles from that, and done the same from those two sites from the Southwestern and Stein Camp? You said that was 6 degrees off true north. That line would meet somewhere?
Yes.
Like, where does that line meet? Because the one going north and the
So,
one coming east from Cahokian would meet.
Yeah, the one at, we're going to go back, bear with me again, to the Angel. So at about 294 degrees, if you were to go from Angel all the way west, northwest, you would actually hit Cahokia. So it very generally might reference Cahokia. That one's a little more tenuous, of course, but that lunar alignment is also just like the general direction. Being at Angel, that you would travel towards Cahokia. But no, I haven't done sort of the wider landscape.
But I just thought, like, you know, one's 5 degrees off, one's 6 degrees off.
Yeah.
The lines are going to cross at some point, but it's just going to miss the mound. How far out? Where is that?
Yeah, I've done that a little bit with Southwind and Stephen Stein Camp because also Man is right there. I was thinking that maybe those sites might reference each other. There doesn't seem to be any indication of that I've been able to tell.
Since I happen to live basically across the street from Emerald Mound,
Oh, okay.
am majorly focused on that. But bringing up what you just said about the alignment going from Angel all the way to Cahokia, and what about Emerald in that whole greater alignment concept?
Well, it's such like a coarse measurement that that also points right at Emerald, which would make sense. I mean, when I say it points towards Cahokia, I really mean sort of the greater American bottom because we're zoomed out that far, but certainly there's a lot of evidence of Yankeetown decorated pottery. Those Lake Woodland folks from southwestern Indiana, there's a lot of evidence that they went to Emerald, so they probably immigrated, took pilgrimages, and went through Emerald. So it's very possible that that would have been the first stop, and probably there's been a lot of research showing that there was sort of a processional way to Emerald, and Emerald would have been arguably the first stop into the American bottom and on your way to Cahokia. So when I say Cahokia, I really mean Emerald. That was great.
Take one more and then we're...
Sure.
On the excavation of the homes, do they tell how many people were living in there, or the organization of the house, or the structure, and
Yeah.
the population of Angel?
So the population estimates for Angel vary from 200 people, which I think is low, to 2,000, which might be a little high, but I'd say closer to 2,000 than 200. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the end. I've got an excavation plan of the structure that I excavated at Stephen Stein Camp, so you can see a little bit of the internal. I'll come back to this slide later. If you want to scan the QR code, it will take you to some more information. So this is the plan of a structure that I excavated. So you can see on the interior, these are all posts and pits that we were not able to excavate, but there were some central hearths and pits right here. Sometimes you'll find benches or other sort of internal features that show how the household was organized internally. A lot of times it's just open. I'm going to have to defer to my Mississippian colleagues in the back on what the estimates are for how many people were living in an average wall trench structure.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it has to do with the square footage or square meters of the interior floor area of the house. And it ranges from like 2.6 to 7.2, depending on the size of the house. And it's based on ethnographic analogies and other data that predecessors have worked on.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Liz.